itself, which turns out to be enough. The island exists in a state of radical honesty about what it is: beautiful, remote, complicated, wild, gentle, dark, luminous, ancient, and stubbornly, magnificently itself. So let's begin at the beginning, which in Tasmania's case means going back much further than you might think. This island has been inhabited for at least 40,000 years, probably longer. When the Aboriginal people first arrived, they walked here. Tasmania wasn't an island yet. Sea levels were lower during the Ice Age, and what we now call the Bass Strait was a land bridge connecting Tasmania to the Australian mainland. The Aboriginal Tasmanians walked across carrying their tools, their knowledge, their stories, their entire civilization on their backs and in their memories. Then the ice melted, the oceans rose, the land bridge disappeared beneath the waves, and Tasmania became an island. The Aboriginal people who lived here found themselves cut off from the mainland, isolated for the next 10,000 years. They developed their own distinct culture, their own languages, their own relationship with this place. They lived through ice ages and warm periods. They watched the climate shift and adapted. They learned every plant, every animal, every stone, every water source. They created one of the longest continuous cultures in human history. And then, in a few brutal decades, they were almost destroyed. The British arrived in 1803, establishing a penal colony, and what followed was one of the darkest chapters in human history. The colonizers didn't see the Aboriginal Tasmanians as people. They saw them as obstacles, as problems to be solved through violence, disease, and displacement. The Black War, as it became known, was a campaign of systematic extermination. Bounties were placed on Aboriginal people, hunting parties were organized, communities were destroyed. By the 1830s, the population had collapsed from thousands to a few dozen survivors who were rounded up and exiled to Flinders Island. The story the colonizers told themselves was that the Aboriginal Tasmanians had gone extinct. This was a convenient lie that absolved the colonizers of their crimes and cleared the way for them to claim the land without moral complication. But it was a lie. The Aboriginal Tasmanians survived. They persisted. They carried their culture forward through generations of oppression and denial. Today, there are thousands of Aboriginal Tasmanians, descendants of those survivors, fighting to have their land rights recognized, their history acknowledged, their culture respected. This history sits under everything in Tasmania. You can't understand this place without acknowledging it. The beauty exists, but so does the grief. The wilderness is magnificent, but it's also a landscape of dispossession. When you walk through the forests, you're walking through country that belonged to people who were violently removed from it. This doesn't mean you can't appreciate the beauty. It means you appreciate it with awareness, with respect, with an understanding that you're a guest in a place with a long, complex, often painful history. Now let's talk about Hobart, because this is where most people begin their Tasmanian journey, and it's a city that immediately sets the tone for everything that follows. Hobart is Australia's second oldest city and its smallest capital. It sits on the banks of the Derwent River, with Mount Wellington looming behind it like a silent guardian. The city has a population of about 240,000 people, which means it's more like a large town than a proper city. You can walk from one side to the other in less than an hour. Everyone seems to know everyone else, or at least know someone who knows them. The first thing you notice about Hobart is how intact it feels. Most Australian cities demolished their old buildings in the post-war rush to modernize, replacing Victorian architecture with concrete and glass. Hobart didn't have enough money to do that, which turned out to be a blessing. The old sandstone warehouses along the waterfront still stand. The narrow streets in the city center still follow their original colonial layout. Georgian townhouses line the hills above the harbor. The city feels like it grew organically over 2 centuries, rather than being bulldozed and rebuilt every few decades. Salamanca Place is the heart of tourist Hobart, a row of beautifully restored sandstone warehouses from the 1830s that now house galleries, cafes, restaurants, and boutiques. Every Saturday, the Salamanca Market takes over the street, with hundreds of stalls selling everything from organic vegetables to handmade jewelry to artisan cheese to paintings of Mount Wellington in various atmospheric conditions. The market has been running since 1972, and it's become an institution. Hobartians don't say they're going shopping on Saturday morning, they say they're going to Salamanca. But the real Hobart, the one that residents actually live in, exists in the suburbs that climb the hills behind the city center. Battery Point, with its tiny cottages and narrow lanes, feels like a village that accidentally got absorbed into a city. Sandy Bay stretches along the river, home to the University of Tasmania and a seemingly endless number of cafes where students nurse single coffees for hours while pretending to study. North Hobart, or NoHo as the locals call it with heavy irony, is the hipster district, full of restaurants, bars, and people wearing expensive outdoor gear to walk to brunch. The weather in Hobart is famously unpredictable, which locals summarize with the saying, 4 seasons in one day. You'll start the morning in brilliant sunshine, then clouds will roll in from Mount Wellington, bringing rain and wind, then the sun will come back out, then more clouds, then maybe some hail, then sunshine again. The locals don't check weather forecasts, they just dress in layers and accept that they'll experience every possible atmospheric condition before lunchtime. Mount Wellington, or Kunanyi as it's known in the Aboriginal language, dominates the city physically and psychologically. It's 1,271 meters high, and you can drive almost to the summit. On clear days, the views from the top are extraordinary. The city laid out below, the Derwent River snaking toward the sea, the surrounding farmland patchworked in greens and browns, the distant mountains marking the horizon. But clear days are rare. More often, the mountain is wrapped in clouds, mysterious and moody, a reminder that nature sets the terms here, not humans. The mountain's weather is genuinely dangerous. People have died up there, caught in sudden storms, disoriented by fog, unprepared for how quickly conditions can deteriorate. There's a stone shelter at the summit called the Pinnacle, built in the 1930s, where hikers and drivers huddle when the weather turns. Inside, there's a logbook where people write their observations, and reading through it is like reading a collective diary of human encounters with wilderness. Came up in sunshine, descended in a blizzard, thank God for the shelter. Proposed to my girlfriend here, she said yes, can't feel my fingers. 11th time up the mountain this year, still takes my breath away. People in Hobart have a personal relationship with Mount Wellington. They look at it every day. They watch the clouds form around its peak and know what weather is coming. They hike its trails, run its fire roads, mountain bike down its slopes. The mountain is both backdrop and companion, simultaneously distant and intimate. When you meet someone in Hobart and mention you hiked the mountain, they'll immediately ask which trail you took, what the weather was like, whether you saw the wedge-tailed eagles that nest on the cliff faces. The mountain is common ground, a shared reference point for everyone who lives in its shadow. From Hobart, let's head south, down the Channel Highway toward the Huon Valley. This road follows the d'Entrecasteaux Channel, named after a French explorer, and it's one of the most beautiful drives in Tasmania. The road curves along the water's edge, passing through small settlements with names like Kettering, Woodbridge, and Cygnet. Apple orchards cover the hillsides, their gnarled branches heavy with fruit in autumn. Oyster farms dot the shallows of the channel, their lines of buoys bobbing in the current. The Huon Valley has a particular character that sets it apart from the rest of Tasmania. It's where the hippies came in the 1970s, buying up cheap land and establishing communes, organic farms, and alternative lifestyles. Many of those communes are gone now, but the culture they created persists. The valley is full of small-scale farmers growing heritage vegetables, artisan cheesemakers crafting award-winning products, cider makers fermenting local apples, and craftspeople of every description. There's a quiet creativity here, a commitment to doing things with care and attention, a rejection of industrial scale in favor of human scale. Cygnet is the unofficial capital of this alternative culture. It's a town of about 1,200 people, with a main street that consists of a few cafes, a bookshop, a health food store, and a pub. There's a community garden, a folk festival every year, and a general vibe that suggests people here have made conscious decisions about how they want to live their lives. The pace is slow, the conversations are long. The coffee is excellent because someone decided 15 years ago that excellent coffee mattered and opened a roastery that's still going strong. Further south, past Cygnet, the road narrows and roughens as you approach the edge of the southwest wilderness. This is where Tasmania starts to show its wild side, where the comfortable tourist infrastructure gives way to something rawer and more challenging. The town of Dover sits at the entrance to this wilderness, a fishing village that serves as the last outpost of civilization before the great southern forests take over completely. From Dover, you can continue south to Cockle Creek, which is literally the end of the road. There's nothing beyond it except the South Coast Trek, one of Australia's great multi-day wilderness hikes, and then Antarctica. Standing at Cockle Creek, looking out at the Southern Ocean, you can feel the emptiness. There's nothing between you and the South Pole except water and weather. The wind comes straight from Antarctica, carrying with it a cold that feels different from normal cold, ancient and absolute. But let's backtrack slightly and talk about Bruny Island, because this place deserves its own extended consideration. Bruny is actually two islands connected by a narrow sandy isthmus called the Neck, and it's a microcosm of everything that makes Tasmania special. You reach it by ferry from Kettering, a 20-minute crossing that immediately makes you feel like you're entering a different world. The ferry runs regularly but not frequently, which means you have to organize your life around its timetable. This is your first lesson in Bruny time. Things happen when they happen, not when you want them to happen. Bruny Island has a permanent population of about 600 people, which swells to several thousand during the summer months when tourists and holiday homeowners arrive. But even at its busiest, Bruny maintains a profound sense of isolation. There are no banks, no supermarkets, no chain stores of any kind. There's a small general store in each of the main settlements, and that's it. If you forget to bring something from the mainland, you either do without or improvise. The island is about 50 kilometers long and narrow, rarely more than a few kilometers wide. The landscape varies dramatically between the North and South Islands. North Bruny is relatively gentle, with rolling farmland, calm beaches, and protected bays. South Bruny is rugged and dramatic, with towering sea cliffs, dense forests, and wild coastlines that bear the full force of the Southern Ocean. The Neck, which connects them, is one of Tasmania's most iconic sights, a narrow strip of sand with the ocean on one side and a calm channel on the other. So narrow you can literally see both coasts at once. There's a staircase at the Neck that climbs to a viewpoint, and the climb is worth the effort. From the top, you can see the full hourglass shape of the isthmus, the two islands bulging on either side, the sand looking impossibly fragile, like a thread that could break at any moment. At night, if you're lucky and patient, you can watch little penguins come ashore. They nest in the dunes, and after spending their days fishing in the ocean, they return after dark, waddling up the beach in the darkness, making sounds like rusty hinges. Bruni has become something of a foodie destination in recent years, which sounds pretentious but actually makes sense when you understand the island's agricultural history. The soil is good, the climate is mild, and people have been farming here since the early colonial period. What's changed is the scale and philosophy. Instead of industrial agriculture, Bruni has embraced artisan production. There's a cheese factory making European-style cheeses from local milk. There's an oyster farm producing some of the best oysters in Australia. There's a berry farm, a chocolate factory, a whiskey distillery, and a smokehouse producing smoked salmon and trout. The star of Bruni's food scene is probably the oysters. Pacific oysters thrive in the cold, clean waters around the island, and they develop a particular flavor that oyster enthusiasts claim they can identify blind. The standard way to experience Bruni oysters is to visit Get Shocked, an oyster farm on the northwest coast, where they harvest oysters fresh from the water and serve them to you on the deck overlooking the very waters they came from. You sit there in the sunshine or the wind or the rain, eating oysters that were alive 30 seconds ago, tasting the ocean in its purest form. But Bruni isn't just about food tourism, despite what Instagram might suggest. The island has a deeper magic that reveals itself, slowly, over days rather than hours. It's in the quality of the light, which seems clearer and more luminous than mainland light. It's in the silence, which is so profound that city dwellers often find it unsettling at first. It's in the wildlife, wallabies grazing in the early morning, white-bellied sea eagles hunting along the coastline, black cockatoos calling from the treetops, echidnas shuffling through the undergrowth. There's a lighthouse on the southern tip of Bruni, at Cape Bruni, that's worth the rough drive to reach. The lighthouse was built in 1836, making it the second oldest lighthouse in Australia, and it still operates today. The lighthouse keepers' cottages have been restored and converted into accommodation, so you can actually stay there, sleeping in a stone building that's nearly 200 years old, listening to the wind howl around the cape, watching the light sweep across the darkness every few seconds. The Cape itself is a dramatic place, with steep cliffs dropping into the churning ocean, exposed rock formations that look like they've been sculpted by giants, and a constant sense of wildness that reminds you how small and temporary human structures are in the face of geological time. Standing at Cape Bruni, looking out at the empty ocean, you're looking at the edge of something. Behind you is all of human civilization, all of history, all of culture. In front of you is just ocean, just weather, just the raw forces of nature doing what they've done for millions of years. Now let's shift our attention to the East Coast, because Tasmania's eastern shores offer a completely different character from the wild South. The East Coast faces the Tasmanian Sea, and it's protected from the worst of the Southern Ocean weather. The result is a coastline that's gentler, sunnier, and more welcoming. This is where Tasmanians go on summer holidays, where the beaches are white sand rather than rock, where the water temperature occasionally climbs above teeth-chattering into merely very cold. The journey from Hobart to the East Coast takes you through Orford, Treebuna, and Swansea, each a small coastal town with its own personality. Treebuna is the departure point for Maria Island, one of Tasmania's most significant national parks. Maria Island is car-free, which immediately makes it interesting. The only way to get around is on foot or by bicycle. The island has a complicated history. It was an Aboriginal gathering place for thousands of years, then a whaling station, then a penal colony, then a cement works, then an agricultural property, and finally a national park. That's a lot of history for a small island, and the evidence of all these phases is still visible. The East Coast has a Mediterranean quality that the rest of Tasmania lacks. The climate is drier and sunnier. Wineries have established themselves here, producing cool climate wines that are increasingly winning international recognition. Lavender farms stripe the hillsides with purple in summer. Olive groves produce oil that rivals anything from southern Europe. It's a landscape that invites lingering, that rewards slow exploration rather than rapid transit. But let's not get too comfortable on the sunny East Coast. We need to talk about the West Coast, because that's where Tasmania gets serious. The West Coast is everything the East Coast is not. Dark, wet, wild, uncompromising, and magnificently indifferent to human comfort. This is where the roaring 40s smash into Tasmania after traveling uninterrupted across the Southern Ocean. This is where annual rainfall is measured in meters rather than millimeters. This is where the forests are so dense that early explorers took weeks to cover distances that would be a day's walk in open country. The West Coast is also where Tasmania's mining history is most visible. The towns of Queenstown and Zeehan were once booming mining centers, extracting copper, silver, lead, and gold from the rich deposits in the ancient rocks. The environmental cost was enormous. Around Queenstown, the hills are completely barren, stripped of vegetation by a combination of mining, smelting, and logging. The landscape looks Martian. Red and orange earth, eroded gullies, no trees, no grass, just exposed rock and soil. It's disturbing and strangely beautiful at the same time. Queenstown itself has a population of about 2,000 people, and it clings to existence in a way that feels precarious. The mines that built the town have mostly closed. The population has declined from its peak of over 5,000. The buildings are weathered and worn. But there's a determination here, a refusal to let the town die, a stubborn insistence that this place still matters. The locals will tell you that Queenstown is the wettest town in Australia, receiving over 2,400 millimeters of rain per year. They say this with a mixture of pride and resignation, the way you might acknowledge a difficult relative who you love despite their flaws. The drive from Queenstown to Strahan, the main town on the west coast, takes you through country that oscillates between rainforest and desolation. One moment you're driving through dense temperate rainforest, with myrtle beech and sassafras forming a canopy overhead, massive tree ferns creating an understory, and moss covering every surface. The next moment, you emerge into an area that's been logged or mined, and the contrast is shocking. Strahan sits on Macquarie Harbour, a massive inland harbour connected to the ocean by a narrow channel called Hell's Gates. The harbour is so large it creates its own weather systems. The water is stained dark brown by tannins leaching from the surrounding forests, giving it an ominous appearance. But the darkness is just color. The water is actually very clean. The harbor is deep enough for large ships, and it was used as a penal settlement in the early 1800s, housing the worst offenders in the British convict system at Sarah Island. Sarah Island was Tasmania's Alcatraz. It was isolated, escape was nearly impossible, and conditions were brutal. The convicts were forced to fell massive Huon pine trees from the surrounding forests, cut them into timber, and build ships. The work was backbreaking, the weather was relentless, and punishment was severe. Many convicts died here, either from accidents, disease, or despair. The ruins of the settlement are still visible on the island, and boat tours take visitors across the harbor to see them. But Strahan is more than its dark history. It's also the gateway to the Gordon River, one of Tasmania's most iconic waterways. The river flows through the heart of the Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area, passing through ancient rainforest that has barely changed in thousands of years. Boat tours depart from Strahan daily, heading up the harbor, through Hell's Gates, and into the ocean before turning back into the Gordon River proper. The journey up the Gordon River is like traveling backward through time. The modern world falls away. The trees crowd down to the water's edge. The river is mirror smooth, perfectly reflecting the forest, creating disorienting double images where you can't tell where reality ends and reflection begins. The silence is profound. When the boat's engines cut off, you can hear the forest breathing, the call of birds, the rustle of leaves, the drip of water from the canopy. The tours typically stop at Heritage Landing, where a short boardwalk takes you into the rainforest proper. The trees here are ancient, some over 2,000 years old. Huon pines grow incredibly slowly in the cold, wet conditions, sometimes adding less than a millimeter of growth per year. The tree you're standing next to might have been a seedling when the Roman Empire was at its height. That's a challenging thought to fully process. This tree was alive before Christianity, before Islam, before the entire modern world emerged. It's still alive now, quietly growing in this remote corner of Tasmania, indifferent to human history. The Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area covers about 1.38 million hectares, roughly 20% of Tasmania's total landmass. It's one of the largest temperate wilderness areas in the southern hemisphere, and it's genuinely wild in a way that few places on Earth still are. There are areas within the wilderness that have never had a human presence, where no person has ever walked. The forests are so dense, the terrain so difficult, the weather so harsh that they remain unexplored. This is increasingly rare on a planet where we've mapped every square meter from space, where Google Street View penetrates even the most remote villages. But in Tasmania's southwest, there are still secrets. The fight to protect this wilderness was one of the defining political battles in Australian history. In the early 1980s, the Tasmanian government approved the construction of a dam on the Franklin River, which would have flooded vast areas of pristine wilderness. Conservationists launched a massive protest campaign. Thousands of people traveled to Tasmania to blockade the construction site. Over 1,000 people were arrested. The protests became national news, and the issue became a flashpoint in the 1983 federal election. When the new government was elected, one of its first acts was to stop the dam. The Franklin River still flows free today because people fought for it. The wilderness exists because enough people decided it was worth protecting, even at personal cost. This history is important because it reminds us that wilderness isn't something that just naturally persists. It requires active protection, constant vigilance, and people who care enough to fight when it's threatened. Now let's turn our attention to the north of Tasmania, which has its own distinct character. Launceston, Tasmania's second city, sits at the head of the Tamar River. With a population of about 87,000, it's significantly smaller than Hobart, and it has a completely different energy. Where Hobart is artsy and slightly bohemian, Launceston is more conservative and traditional. Where Hobart sprawls across hills, Launceston sits in a river valley. Where Hobart is dominated by Mount Wellington, Launceston is defined by its river gorge. Cataract Gorge is Launceston's signature attraction, and it's genuinely unusual, a dramatic river gorge that starts literally at the edge of the city center. You can walk from the main shopping street to the entrance of the gorge in about 10 minutes. Once you're in the gorge, the city disappears. Vertical cliffs rise on both sides, the South Esk River flows through the center, and you're suddenly in a natural environment that feels miles from civilization. There are walking trails on both sides of the gorge, a swimming pool fed by river water, a chairlift that spans the gorge, giving views down into the chasm, and colonies of peafowl that roam freely, their calls echoing off the rock walls. It's a strange combination of wild nature and civic amenity, and it perfectly captures Launceston's character: practical, unpretentious, but with unexpected moments of beauty. The towns on the edge of the Highlands have names like Bothwell, Hamilton, and Hughes, reflecting their Scottish heritage. Bothwell is particularly charming, a small town of Georgian sandstone buildings that looks like it was transplanted from the Scottish lowlands. The town has a whiskey distillery, because of course it does, producing single malt whiskey that faithfully follows Scottish traditions while incorporating Tasmanian character. Tasmania's whiskey industry is relatively young, but has already gained international recognition. The cool climate, pure water, and locally grown barley create ideal conditions. But more than that, the whiskey makers have approached the craft with the same obsessive attention to detail that characterizes so much of Tasmania's artisan food and drink scene. They're not trying to make whiskey quickly or cheaply, they're trying to make the best whiskey they possibly can, and they're willing to wait years for it to mature properly. The small town of Deloraine sits at the edge of the Highlands, and it exemplifies the creative revival that's happening in rural Tasmania. 20 years ago, Deloraine was declining, its main street half empty, its young people leaving for opportunities elsewhere. Today, it's thriving. Artists have moved in, setting up galleries and studios. The old buildings have been restored. Cafes and restaurants have opened, serving food that would hold up in any city. There's a craft fair every year that draws thousands of visitors. The town has found a way to be viable without surrendering its small-town character. This pattern repeats across Tasmania. Small towns that should be dying are instead finding new life through creativity, craft, and food. Ross, Sheffield, Richmond, Evandale, each has its own story of revival. Each has found its niche. There's something about Tasmania that attracts creative people, people who are willing to trade lower incomes for better quality of life, people who want to make things with their hands, people who've opted out of the mainstream economy in favor of something more personal and more meaningful. Part of what makes this possible is Tasmania's relatively low cost of living, at least compared to Sydney or Melbourne. You can still buy a house here for what you'd pay for a studio apartment on the mainland. You can rent commercial space in a town center for reasonable rates. You can start a small business without needing massive capital. This isn't to say life is easy in Tasmania. The economy is small, the job market is limited, but if you're willing to create your own opportunities, if you're resourceful and determined, you can build a life here. Now we need to talk about Cradle Mountain, because no discussion of Tasmania would be complete without it. Cradle Mountain is Tasmania's most iconic wilderness destination, the postcard image that represents Tasmanian wilderness to the world. The jagged dolerite peak of Cradle Mountain reflected in the still waters of Dove Lake, often with dramatic clouds or mist adding to the atmosphere. The reality of visiting Cradle Mountain is more complex than the postcard suggests. This is one of Tasmania's most popular tourist destinations, receiving over 300,000 visitors per year. The infrastructure has been carefully managed to protect the environment while accommodating visitors, but the sheer number of people can impact the experience. On a busy summer day, the boardwalk around Dove Lake can feel more like a shopping mall than a wilderness walk. But here's the thing about Cradle Mountain. If you're willing to walk beyond the front country, beyond the tourist honeypots, you'll find genuine wilderness. The Overland Track, one of Australia's great multi-day hikes, starts at Cradle Mountain and runs 65 kilometers south to Lake St. Clair. The track takes 6 days to walk, passing through some of the most stunning alpine country in Australia. You sleep in huts or tents, carry all your supplies, and experience Tasmania's weather in all its moody glory. Walking the overland track is not easy. The weather can be brutal, even in summer. The track climbs over mountain passes, descends into valleys, crosses buttongrass plains, navigates boulder fields, and generally demands that you pay attention to every step. But it rewards you with an intimacy with the landscape that's impossible to achieve from a car or even a day walk. You notice things, the way the light changes through the day, the patterns of lichen on the rocks, the calls of different birds, the smell of the forest after rain, the taste of water from a mountain stream. The ecology of Tasmania's mountains is fascinating. The tree line is much lower than you'd expect, often around 1,000 meters because of the harsh conditions. Above the tree line, you enter alpine moorland dominated by cushion plants, which are exactly what they sound like, plants that grow in dense, cushion-like formations. These cushions can be hundreds of years old, growing just a few millimeters per year. They're fragile, and walking on them can cause damage that takes decades to repair. This is why the boardwalks and designated tracks are so important. The mountains are home to unique species found nowhere else on Earth. The Tasmanian patamelon, a small wallaby, is common in the undergrowth. The Tasmanian devil, though increasingly rare due to a devastating facial tumor disease, still inhabits these forests. Wombats are everywhere, digging burrows that undermine trails and create tripping hazards for unwary hikers. At night, if you're very lucky, you might hear the eerie cry of a spotted-tailed quoll, a carnivorous marsupial that looks like a cross between a cat and a possum. Lake St. Clair, at the southern end of the overland track, is Australia's deepest lake, reaching depths of over 200 meters. The lake was carved out by glaciers during the last ice age, and its depth and cold temperatures create unique conditions. The water is extraordinarily clear. Fish that die in the lake don't decompose normally. Instead, they're preserved in the cold water, creating a kind of underwater museum of aquatic life. The Tasmanian Wilderness World Heritage Area, which includes Cradle Mountain and much of the country we've been discussing, meets 7 out of 10 criteria for World Heritage listing, one of only a few places on Earth to achieve this. It's recognized for its natural beauty, its geological significance, its biological diversity, and its cultural importance. This designation provides legal protection, but it also creates tensions. Protection means restricting access, which conflicts with tourism, which provides economic benefits to local communities. These tensions are ongoing and unresolved. Let's shift our focus to something often overlooked: Tasmania's dark history, beyond colonization. Tasmania was used as a dumping ground for Britain's worst criminals, and the penal settlements established here were among the most brutal in the British Empire. Port Arthur on the Tasman Peninsula is the best preserved of these settlements, and now one of Tasmania's most visited tourist sites. Port Arthur operated from 1833 to 1877 as a penal settlement for repeat offenders. If you committed a crime in Australia while already a convict, you got sent to Port Arthur. The philosophy was rehabilitation through punishment and labor. Convicts worked in brutal conditions: logging, shipbuilding, mining coal. Punishment for infractions included solitary confinement, flogging, and time in the separate prison, where convicts were kept in complete isolation, even being required to wear masks when outside their cells to prevent them from communicating with each other. The settlement was remarkably sophisticated for its time. There were workshops, a hospital, a church, accommodation for guards and their families, even a cemetery divided into sections for free settlers, guards, and convicts. The buildings were well constructed from local sandstone, and many are still standing. Walking through Port Arthur today is deeply affecting. You're moving through a place of immense suffering, where thousands of men endured conditions that we would now recognize as torture. Port Arthur has another layer of darkness. It was the site of Australia's worst mass shooting in 1996, when a gunman killed 35 people. The shooting led to sweeping gun control reforms across Australia, but for Port Arthur, it added fresh trauma to an already traumatic place. The site has a memorial to the victims, separate from the historic penal settlement, and many visitors find themselves grappling with these layered histories: colonial violence, convict suffering, and modern tragedy, all occupying the same space. The Tasman Peninsula, where Port Arthur is located, is worth exploring beyond the historic site. The coastline here is dramatic, with massive sea cliffs, blowholes, and rock formations with names like Tasman Arch and Devil's Kitchen. The peninsula is connected to the mainland by a narrow isthmus called Eaglehawk Neck, which the authorities used to their advantage by stationing guard dogs along the neck to prevent convict escapes. The peninsula has become a destination for rock climbing, with sea cliffs offering spectacular and challenging routes. There are also excellent coastal walks, including the Three Capes Track, a 4-day hiking trail that showcases the peninsula's dramatic coastline. The track is well maintained with high-quality huts, and it's designed as a more comfortable alternative to rougher tracks like the Overland. You still get wilderness and stunning scenery, but you sleep in huts with bunks and mattresses rather than tents. This brings us to an important point about Tasmania's tourism evolution. The island is trying to balance wilderness protection with tourism development, and different people have very different ideas about where that balance should be. Some argue that Tasmania should remain wild and difficult to access, that wilderness has inherent value beyond human recreation. Others argue that if people don't experience wilderness, they won't value it enough to protect it, and that well-managed tourism can provide economic benefits that help justify conservation. These aren't abstract philosophical debates. They play out in specific decisions. Should more walking tracks be built? Should huts be upgraded or kept basic? Should helicopter flights over wilderness be allowed? Should mountain bike trails be permitted in national parks? Each decision involves trade-offs between access and preservation, economic development, and environmental protection. Tasmania's Aboriginal communities add another voice to these debates, arguing that their perspectives and rights have been too often excluded from decisions about land management. The Tasmanian Aboriginal people maintain that they never ceded their land, that sovereignty was never transferred, and that they should have a primary voice in determining how their country is managed. This is an ongoing conversation, often contentious, touching on fundamental questions about justice, history, and the meaning of reconciliation. Now let's talk about something more cheerful: Tasmania's peculiar relationship with seasonal change. Tasmania is the only part of Australia that experiences 4 genuine seasons. Summer can be warm, even hot, though it's rarely oppressive. Autumn is spectacular, with deciduous trees imported by early settlers creating displays of red, orange, and gold that rival Northern Hemisphere autumn colors. Winter brings snow to the mountains and cold rain to the lowlands. Spring is unpredictable, beautiful, and often windy. This seasonal variation gives Tasmania a rhythm that the rest of Australia lacks. People change their wardrobes, their activities, their expectations with the seasons. Restaurants change their menus, highlighting seasonal ingredients. Festivals and events are timed to the seasons: the Tulip Festival in spring, the harvest celebrations in autumn, the Winter Festival in Hobart during the darkest months. There's a sense of time passing in a cyclical way that connects to natural rhythms rather than just the calendar. The light changes dramatically with the seasons. Summer days are long, with twilight lasting until nearly 10 p.m. Winter days are short, with darkness falling by 5 p.m. The quality of light varies too. Summer light is golden and warm. Winter light is clear and cold. Autumn light is rich and saturated. Spring light is bright and clean. Artists are obsessed with Tasmanian light. They talk about it constantly, trying to capture its particular qualities on canvas or in photographs. Tasmania's isolation means that it missed some of the homogenizing forces that affected mainland Australia. Things that disappeared elsewhere persisted here. Traditional trades continued when they became unprofitable elsewhere. Old buildings were preserved because there wasn't money to replace them. Cultural practices maintained because there wasn't pressure to conform to mainland norms. The result is that Tasmania often feels like it's operating on a different timeline, preserving elements of the past not out of nostalgia, but out of practical necessity. The boat-building tradition is a good example. Wooden boats continue to be built in Tasmania using traditional methods, not as museum pieces, but as working vessels. The Wooden Boat Festival in Hobart, held every 2 years, celebrates this tradition. Hundreds of wooden boats of all sizes fill the harbor, from small dinghies to massive schooners. Boat builders demonstrate their crafts. There are sailing races, rowing competitions, and endless conversations about the superiority of wood over fiberglass. This commitment to craft, to doing things properly, to valuing quality over speed or cheapness, runs through Tasmanian culture. It's in the cheesemakers who age their cheeses for months or years. It's in the furniture makers crafting pieces from local timbers. It's in the potters throwing clay on wheels that they built themselves. It's in the bakers starting their dough the night before. It's in the farmers nurturing their soil for the long term, rather than extracting maximum short-term yield. This isn't romanticizing hardship or poverty. Many craftspeople struggle financially. The markets are small, the costs are high, the returns are uncertain. But there's a stubbornness here, a refusal to compromise on quality, even when compromise would be more profitable. It's as if people have decided that some things matter more than money, and having decided that, they're willing to live with the consequences. The university town of Sandy Bay deserves its own consideration. The University of Tasmania's main campus sits on the hillside overlooking the Derwent River, and it shapes the character of the surrounding suburb. There's an intellectual culture here that contrasts with Tasmania's practical, hands-on reputation. The university punches above its weight in research, particularly in Antarctic science, marine biology, and climate research. Tasmania's position as the gateway to Antarctica makes it a logical base for Antarctic research, and the Australian Antarctic Division is headquartered in Hobart. The relationship between town and gown, as they say, is complicated. The university brings intellectual capital, cultural events, and economic activity, but it also creates a divide between permanent residents and transient students. Property prices in Sandy Bay are driven up by demand from university families. The cafes and bars cater to student tastes and budgets. Some longtime residents feel their suburb has been colonized by the university. Others appreciate the energy and diversity that students bring. What's interesting is how many students arrive from mainland Australia intending to stay just long enough to complete their degrees and then never leave. They fall in love with Tasmania, with its pace, its beauty, its sense of community. They find jobs, buy houses, start families, and become Tasmanians. This pattern has been going on for decades, and it's one of the main ways Tasmania maintains its population despite low birth rates. King Island and Flinders Island, Tasmania's two main Bass Strait islands, deserve attention as microcosms of island life taken to an extreme. These are islands off an island, even more isolated than Tasmania itself. King Island, with a population of about 1,600, sits halfway between Tasmania and Victoria. It's famous for its beef, its dairy products, and its cheese. The island's pastures are fertilized by seaweed washed up from the ocean, giving the grass a particular nutritional profile that apparently makes the beef and dairy extraordinarily flavorful. King Island has some of the most dramatic beaches in Australia. long stretches of white sand that are often completely empty. The waves are powerful, making it a destination for surfers willing to brave cold water and remote lineups. The island has a golf course that regularly makes lists of the world's most beautiful courses, with holes that play along the cliff tops with views of the ocean. The pace of life is slow, even by Tasmanian standards. Things happen when they happen. Nobody hurries. Flinders Island, the largest of the Furneaux group, sits to the northeast of Tasmania. It has a population of about 1,000 and an economy based on fishing, farming, and increasingly tourism. The island has significant Aboriginal history. It was where the last surviving Tasmanian Aboriginal people were exiled in the 1830s. Today, many of Tasmania's Aboriginal people trace their lineage to families that survived on Flinders Island. The island's geography is striking. Granite mountains rise from flat plains, creating dramatic silhouettes. The beaches are pristine and empty. The fishing is excellent. There's a simplicity to life here that's increasingly rare. People know each other, help each other, depend on each other. The island forces community because there's no alternative. If someone needs help, the community provides it, because next time, you might be the one needing help. Both islands have challenges. Services are limited. Medical care requires evacuation to the mainland for anything serious. Employment opportunities are few. Young people often leave for education or work, and many don't return. The populations are aging. But for people who value space, quiet, and community over convenience and variety, these islands offer something precious. Let's talk about Tasmania's relationship with death, which might seem morbid, but is actually revealing. Tasmania has one of the oldest populations in Australia, and the culture here has a more accepting, less anxious relationship with mortality than you find in younger, more optimistic places. This shows up in surprising ways: the prevalence of community cemeteries that are maintained as parks and visited regularly, the willingness to discuss death and dying openly, the emphasis on palliative care and dying at home rather than in hospitals. The Port Arthur ghost tours are part of this. The site offers nighttime tours where guides tell stories of deaths, hauntings, and supernatural occurrences. You might dismiss this as tourist schlock, and certainly there's an element of entertainment, but there's also something more serious, a willingness to sit with darkness, to acknowledge that history is often tragic, that places can hold trauma, that we can't always explain everything rationally. Tasmania has numerous ghost tours, haunted hotels, and sites of supposedly supernatural activity. The Cascades Female Factory in Hobart, a former prison for female convicts, offers night tours that are genuinely unsettling. The isolation cells where women were punished are dark and cold. The stories of suffering are documented and real. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, these places feel heavy with history, with grief, with the accumulated weight of human suffering. This acceptance of darkness is part of Tasmania's character. The island doesn't try to be relentlessly cheerful or optimistic. It acknowledges that life is difficult, that history is complicated, that darkness is part of the human experience. This can be refreshing if you're tired of forced positivity. It can also be challenging if you're seeking escape from your own darkness. Tasmania doesn't offer escape, it offers reality in all its complexity. The culinary scene deserves deeper attention because it's become central to Tasmania's identity. The farm-to-table movement here isn't a trendy marketing strategy, it's geography and necessity. Tasmania is small enough that you can meet the people who grow your food. The chef who serves you dinner probably knows the farmer who raised the lamb, the orchardist who grew the apples, the fisherman who caught the fish. These aren't abstract supply chains, they're personal relationships. This creates a different relationship with food. You're not just eating dinner, you're participating in a web of relationships between land, farmers, chefs, and diners. The food carries stories. The lamb was raised on that particular hillside, eating that particular grass. The oysters grew in that specific bay. The vegetables were harvested this morning from that farm where you can see the rows of crops when you drive past. Hobart's restaurant scene has exploded over the past decade, with establishments like Franklin, Deermacher, and Templo gaining national and international recognition. These restaurants serve highly creative food that's deeply rooted in Tasmanian ingredients. They forage for native plants, use heirloom varieties of vegetables, serve cuts of meat you won't find elsewhere, and approach cooking with the same obsessive attention to detail that characterizes Tasmanian craft culture.
But the food culture isn't just high-end. There are farm gates all over Tasmania where you can buy directly from producers. There are community gardens, farmers markets every weekend, and a general expectation that food should taste like something, should have character, should reflect the place it comes from. Even the fish and chip shops use real potatoes and fresh fish. Even the pub meals are often made from scratch using local ingredients. The wine scene has matured into something genuinely world-class. Tasmanian sparkling wine is now mentioned in the same breath as champagne. Tasmanian Pinot Noir competes with Burgundy. Chardonnay from the Coal River Valley rivals anything from Australia or abroad. The winemakers haven't achieved this by copying other regions. They've done it by understanding Tasmania's particular climate and soil, by experimenting, by being willing to fail, and by maintaining absurdly high standards. Coal River Valley, just northeast of Hobart, has become Tasmania's premier wine region. The valley has cool temperatures, long growing seasons, and ancient soils. The proximity to Hobart means that winemakers can have sophisticated operations while still being part of the city's cultural life. Many of the winemakers came from other careers, bringing fresh perspectives. They're engineers, scientists, artists who decided to make wine and brought their particular ways of thinking to the craft. The food and wine culture connects to Tasmania's broader emphasis on place. There's a growing understanding that place matters, that where something is grown or made affects its character, that local distinctiveness is valuable in an increasingly homogenized world. Tasmania is small enough and isolated enough to maintain distinctiveness. It's not trying to be like anywhere else, it's trying to be more fully itself. Now, we should discuss the challenges Tasmania faces, because honesty requires acknowledging that this place isn't a paradise. The economy is fragile, unemployment is higher than the national average, wages are lower. Many young people leave for better opportunities. The population is aging faster than almost anywhere else in Australia. Infrastructure is often inadequate. Public services are stretched thin. Poverty exists, particularly in regional areas and among Aboriginal communities. The health statistics are concerning. Tasmania has higher rates of obesity, smoking, and preventable diseases than the Australian mainland. Life expectancy is lower. Access to specialist medical care is limited, particularly in remote areas. Mental health services are inadequate for demand. These aren't abstract statistics, they represent real people struggling with real problems. The housing crisis that's affecting all of Australia is particularly acute in Tasmania. Property prices in Hobart have doubled in the past decade, driven partly by mainland buyers seeking cheaper property and partly by short-term rental platforms like Airbnb removing long-term housing from the market. Rental vacancy rates in Hobart are among the lowest in Australia. Finding housing is genuinely difficult, particularly for low-income residents. Education levels lag behind the mainland. High school completion rates are lower. University participation is lower.
This creates a cycle where young people who do pursue higher education often leave Tasmania for better universities, and once they've left and established careers elsewhere, they don't return. The state loses its most educated young people, which makes it harder to attract high-skill industries, which perpetuates the problem.
There are also environmental challenges. Climate change is affecting Tasmania in complex ways. Some predictions suggest Tasmania will become more livable as the mainland heats up, but the changes will be disruptive. Bushfires are increasing in frequency and intensity. The 2019 fires burned through areas that hadn't burned in recorded history, including ancient pencil pine forests that can't regenerate. Introduced species like foxes and deer threaten native wildlife. Marine ecosystems are changing as ocean temperatures rise. The logging industry remains contentious. Tasmania has been fighting over its forests for decades. Native forest logging continues despite its economic marginality and environmental cost. The debate has become less about economics. Nobody seriously argues that native forest logging is economically vital, and more about identity, culture, and political tribalism. Some communities see logging as part of their heritage, their way of life, and feel attacked by environmentalists. Environmentalists see continued logging as unconscionable destruction of irreplaceable ecosystems. Both sides have dug in, and productive conversation has become nearly impossible. Yet, despite these challenges, Tasmania maintains a quality of life that people fiercely value. The pace is slower, which means less stress, but also less opportunity. The population is smaller, which means less anonymity, but more community. The economy is smaller, which means lower wages, but also lower cost of living in some areas. The isolation is real, which means fewer connections, but also more autonomy. It's a place of trade-offs, and people who thrive here are those who've consciously chosen Tasmania's particular package of trade-offs. There's a Tasmanian identity that's distinct from the broader Australian identity. Tasmanians often feel like Australia's overlooked cousins, the relatives that show up to family gatherings and are politely tolerated but not really understood. Mainlanders tell Tassie jokes that portray Tasmanians as backwards and inbred. These jokes sting precisely because Tasmania has genuine economic and social challenges, and the mockery feels like kicking people when they're down. But there's also pride in being Tasmanian, a defensiveness that contains real affection for the place. Tasmanians will complain about Tasmania endlessly among themselves, but become fiercely defensive when outsiders criticize. There's a shared understanding that choosing to live in Tasmania means choosing a certain kind of life, and that choice is valid even if others don't understand it. The diaspora of Tasmanians who've left the island is large and often wistful. They live in Melbourne, Sydney, or abroad, pursuing careers that Tasmania couldn't offer, earning money they couldn't earn at home. But they miss Tasmania. They visit when they can. They follow Tasmanian news. They maintain Tasmanian identities even decades after leaving. They tell stories about growing up in Tasmania that emphasize its specialness, its difference, its loss. Many eventually return if they can, taking early retirement, working remotely, finding ways to come home. This longing for Tasmania is real and widespread enough that it must indicate something genuine about the place. People don't generally long for places that don't have meaningful qualities. The longing suggests that Tasmania offers something that's difficult to find elsewhere, perhaps a sense of place, of community, of connection to landscape, of slower time, of life lived at human scale. Let's spend time with the less visited parts of Tasmania, the places that don't make it into tourism brochures, but are essential to understanding the whole. The Northeast, for instance, is often overlooked. Towns like Scottsdale, Derby, and Bridport don't have the dramatic scenery of Cradle Mountain or the sophistication of Hobart, but they have their own character. Derby is particularly interesting because it's reinvented itself as a mountain biking destination. The town was dying, its timber mill closed, its population declining, its future uncertain. Then someone had the idea to build world-class mountain bike trails through the surrounding forests. The trails are spectacular, using the natural terrain to create everything from gentle, family-friendly rides to terrifying downhill runs that attract professional riders. The trails have brought tourism, jobs, and hope. The town has steadied. Cafes and accommodation have opened. Young people are returning. It's a case study in how rural towns can adapt when traditional industries fail. The Midlands, that stretch of country between Launceston and Hobart, are Tasmania's farming heartland. This is sheep country primarily, though there are also cattle properties and increasingly vineyards. The landscape is gentle. Rolling hills, stands of trees, stone walls built by convict labor, old coaching inns that served travelers when the journey between the two cities took days rather than 2 hours. The towns along the Midlands Highway, Campbelltown, Ross, Oatlands, Perth, are beautiful in an understated way. They're built from soft-colored sandstone, with wide streets designed for bullock teams, and a sense of their coaching-in past still tangible. Ross, in particular, is worth stopping for. It has a bakery that claims, probably accurately, to have inspired the bakery in the anime film Kiki's Delivery Service. The bridge across the Macquarie River is a convict-built sandstone structure carved with intricate detail. The town maintains its 19th century character more completely than almost anywhere else in Tasmania. These Midlands towns face uncertain futures. Farming has consolidated, requiring fewer workers. Young people leave for education and don't return. The populations are aging rapidly. Yet the communities persist, maintaining their heritage buildings, running their small museums, organizing their agricultural shows, keeping their identities alive despite demographic challenges. The northwest coast, from Burnie to Stanley, has its own distinct character. This is industrial Tasmania, or what remains of it. Burnie was once a major port and manufacturing center. The port is quieter now, the manufacturing largely gone, but the town is trying to reinvent itself. There's a decent art gallery, some good restaurants, and a maker's workshop where artisans demonstrate traditional crafts like papermaking and silk weaving. Stanley, at the northwest tip of Tasmania, is dominated by the Nut, a flat-topped volcanic plug that rises 152 meters from the sea. You can walk to the top via a steep track or take a chairlift, and the views from the summit are expansive. The town below, the ocean stretching to the horizon, the northwest coast spreading east and south. Stanley itself is a village of maybe 500 people, with a row of restored cottages along the waterfront and a sense of being at the edge of something, the last settlement before the wildness takes over completely. The Tarkin, in Tasmania's northwest, is one of the world's largest temperate rainforests. Over 477,000 hectares of ancient forest, wild rivers, and rugged coastline. It's named after the Aboriginal people who lived there, though it's a relatively recent name, coined by conservationists in the 1990s to give the area an identity in political battles over its future. The Tarkin is contested territory. There are mining interests, logging interests, conservation interests, Aboriginal land claim interests, all overlapping and often conflicting. Driving through the Tarkin is an experience in wildness. The forests close in on the narrow roads. Tree ferns create tunnels of green. The rivers run dark with tannin, their waters stained the color of strong tea. There's a sense of entering a world that predates humans, where the rules are different, where nature is in charge. The Tarkin receives enormous rainfall,
over 2,000 millimeters in some areas, and that rain creates a rainforest ecosystem as lush as anything in the tropics, just colder and darker. The beaches on the northwest coast, places like Marawa and Greens beaches, are wild and windswept. These are beaches for serious surfers, people who don't mind cold water and powerful waves. The sand is often littered with kelp washed up from the ocean, and the wind is almost constant. There's a rawness here, an absence of the comfort and prettiness that characterizes Tasmania's East Coast beaches. These are beaches that demand respect, that can be dangerous, that kill people who underestimate them. This northwest corner of Tasmania is the least visited part of the island, and that's both its challenge and its charm. Challenge because tourism dollars go elsewhere, making economic development difficult. Charm because the lack of visitors means these places remain authentic, ungoverned by tourism expectations, still living their own lives rather than performing for others. Let's talk about Mona, the Museum of Old and New Art, because it's impossible to discuss contemporary Tasmania without addressing what is arguably the most provocative art museum in the world. Mona is the creation of David Walsh, a mathematician turned professional gambler who made a fortune from his gambling system and decided to spend it building an art museum like no other. Mona sits on a peninsula north of Hobart, a massive underground complex carved into the cliff face. The entrance is deliberately understated. You descend into the earth, and the museum reveals itself gradually. The collection is confronting, provocative, often explicitly sexual or scatological. There's a machine that replicates human digestion, producing feces on schedule. There are ancient Egyptian mummies displayed next to contemporary sculptures of female genitalia. There are rooms that disorient, installations that disturb, works that provoke strong reactions, sometimes disgust, sometimes wonder, often both. Walsh's philosophy seems to be that art should provoke, that it should make you feel something, even if what you feel is revulsion. The museum doesn't explain itself. There are no wall texts unless you use the handheld device provided, which gives information about works in Walsh's irreverent voice. The layout is deliberately confusing, designed to disorient visitors, to break down their expectations about how museums should work. Mona has transformed Tasmania's cultural landscape. It attracts over 400,000 visitors per year, many of whom wouldn't have visited Tasmania otherwise. It's put Tasmania on the international art map. It's created a conversation about what art can be, how it can be displayed, who it's for. It's been controversial, with some seeing it as brilliant and others as gratuitously offensive, but it's undeniably significant. The museum hosts an annual winter festival, Dark Mofo, that celebrates darkness, cold, and winter. Events include nude swimming at dawn, light installations, concerts, feasts, and performances that often push boundaries of taste and legality. The festival has become a major drawcard, filling Hobart's hotels in winter, traditionally the slowest tourism season. It's been criticized for being too dark, too confronting, too focused on shock value. It's also been celebrated for giving Hobart an international cultural presence, for creating something unique, for refusing to be safe or boring. Whether you love Mona or hate it, it represents something important about contemporary Tasmania, a willingness to take risks, to support bold visions, to be distinctive rather than safe. Walsh could have built his museum anywhere. He chose Tasmania, specifically chosen because of its isolation, because it's outside the mainstream, because here you can do things that wouldn't be tolerated in Sydney or Melbourne.
The sun is setting over Mount Wellington as I stand in the Cascade Gardens in Hobart, where I began this journey 3 months ago. The mountain's shadow stretches across the city like a gentle hand, and I'm thinking about everything that's changed since I first arrived here, how Tasmania has quietly reshaped the way I see the world and my place in it. This morning, I received an email from David's daughter, the man I met at Cradle Mountain who was dying of cancer. She wrote to tell me that her father passed away peacefully, and that in his final weeks he talked constantly about our conversation by the lake, about how seeing Tasmania had given him a sense of completion he didn't know he needed. She thanked me for sitting with him that day, for not looking away from his tears. Her email ended with a quote from her father. "Tell that filmmaker that Tasmania taught me how to say goodbye to the world without regret. That's the greatest gift a place can give." I've been carrying those words with me all day, and they feel like the key to understanding what this island has been trying to teach me. Tasmania is a place that knows about endings and about what comes after endings. The indigenous people here survived genocide and cultural erasure, yet they're still here, still singing, still connected to country. The forests that were clear-cut are slowly growing back, tree by tree, through the patient work of people who plant, knowing they'll never see the full-grown canopy. The Tasmanian devils are recovering from their disease, not because of any miracle cure, but because people refuse to accept extinction as inevitable. This is a place that understands that endings are rarely final, that what matters is what you do in the aftermath, how you choose to begin again. Last week, I returned to Bruny Island to say goodbye to Patricia and to see the penguins one more time. As we stood in the viewing hide at dusk, watching those tiny birds waddle up from the ocean to their burrows, Patricia turned to me and said something I can't stop thinking about. She said, "You know what I love most about the penguins? They don't know they're supposed to be impressive. They don't know they're symbols of loyalty or perseverance or any of the meanings we project onto them. They just come home every night because that's what penguins do. They're not trying to teach us anything. We're just lucky enough to learn by watching them live." That's Tasmania in a nutshell. It's not trying to be profound or transformative or any of the things travel brochures promise. It's just itself, fully and unselfishly itself. And if you pay attention, if you slow down enough to actually see what's in front of you, that's enough, more than enough. The island asks nothing of you except that you respect it, that you treat it and its people with the dignity they deserve, that you leave it better than you found it if possible, or at least no worse. Yesterday, I spent the afternoon with Auntie Jean on Bruny Island, helping her prepare for a cultural workshop she's leading next week. We sat together weaving baskets from native grasses, and she told me about her granddaughter who's studying both environmental science and indigenous knowledge systems at university, trying to find ways to integrate both approaches to caring for country. "She's the future," Auntie Jean said, her hands moving expertly through the weaving. "She understands that we don't have to choose between old ways and new ways, that the best path forward includes both. She knows her ancestors and she knows climate science, and she sees no contradiction there. That gives me so much hope." Hope, that's the word that keeps coming back to me as I reflect on these months in Tasmania. Not naive hope, not the kind that ignores reality or pretends everything is fine when it's not, but the muscular, determined hope that shows up anyway, that plants trees in contaminated soil, that protects endangered species even when the odds are terrible, that teaches young people traditional languages that were nearly lost, that builds communities in places the world has forgotten. It's the hope that Sarah demonstrated in the Tarkine when she talked about working with former loggers to protect forests. It's the hope Dave showed in Queenstown when he said he'd spend the rest of his life trying to give back to the land he once took from. It's the hope Patricia embodied when she left her corporate career to raise sheep and host travelers and watch penguins come home every night. This afternoon, I met Emma Johnson one last time at her family's orchard in the Huon Valley. She's leaving next week for a semester abroad, studying sustainable agriculture in Costa Rica, and she's nervous and excited in equal measure. We walked through the apple trees, heavy now with fruit nearly ready for harvest, and she told me about her dreams for the future, about farming practices that work with ecosystems rather than against them, about creating food systems that nourish both people and the planet. Tasmania is small enough that we can actually try things here, she said, biting into an apple she'd just picked. We can experiment, we can fail, we can learn, and then we can share what we've learned with the rest of the world. That's our responsibility, I think. We've been given this incredible place, and we have to figure out how to care for it in ways that others can replicate. As she talked, I thought about all the young people I'd met during my travels here, people like Emma and Connor, and the students working with park rangers to protect devil populations, and I felt something unfamiliar, something I realized I hadn't felt in years, optimism about the future. Not certainty, not the belief that everything will work out fine, but genuine optimism rooted in the recognition that there are people doing the hard work of repair and restoration, people who understand what's at stake and are choosing to care anyway. If Tasmania can recover from the devastation of colonialism and environmental destruction, if this island at the bottom of the world can be a laboratory for sustainable living and cultural renewal, then perhaps anywhere can. Perhaps we can. My last morning in Tasmania, I woke before dawn and drove back up to Mount Wellington. I wanted to see the sunrise from the summit, wanted to see the whole island spread out below me one final time. The air was cold and thin, and I could see my breath, but the sky was clear, and as the sun rose, it painted everything in gold, the city and the river and the ocean beyond, the forests stretching to the west, the mountains marching away to the north. From up there, you can see why people fall in love with this place, why they give up careers and relationships and the familiar comfort of wherever they came from to make a life here. It's beautiful, yes, but it's more than beautiful. It's coherent. It makes sense in a way few places do anymore. The scale is human. The connections are visible. The consequences of your choices are immediate and apparent. Standing on that summit, I realized that what Tasmania has given me is permission to believe that small actions matter, that individual choices compound into collective change, that you don't have to solve everything to solve something. Martha Johnson planting trees her great-grandchildren will harvest. Michelle, the park ranger, checking on devil populations night after night. Tom and Lisa choosing to make art in Queenstown rather than seeking easier lives elsewhere. Patricia leaving corporate law to raise sheep and watch penguins. None of them are saving the world in any dramatic sense, but all of them are making their small corner of it better. And the sum of all those small improvements is a place that works, that thrives, that offers hope not as abstraction, but as lived reality. As I drove back down the mountain, I passed the spot where Tom, the fisherman, had pointed inland on my first day and told me the real story was up there, in the hills and forests, in the people and the places they'd chosen to care for. He was right, of course. The real story of Tasmania isn't contained in any single landmark or photograph. It's in the accumulation of small moments and quiet choices, in the decision to stay when leaving would be easier, to protect what others would exploit, to believe in restoration when destruction seems inevitable, to say hello to strangers and invite them to sit by your fire and share your food and tell you their stories. I'm leaving Tasmania tomorrow, flying back to a world that often feels too loud and too fast and too certain of all the wrong things. But I'm taking something with me that I didn't have when I arrived, a kind of template for how to be in the world. Tasmania has shown me that you don't need to have all the answers to start making things better, that you don't need to wait for permission or perfect conditions or complete understanding before you act with care and intention. You just need to pay attention, to respect what's in front of you, to do the next right thing, and then the next, and then the next, trusting that small actions compound into transformation over time. The people I've met here have taught me that meaning isn't something you find, it's something you create through commitment to place and people and values larger than yourself. They've shown me that isolation can be chosen rather than imposed, that distance from the mainstream of modern life isn't deprivation, but liberation, that there's profound joy in living at a human pace in a place you actually care about. They've demonstrated that hope is a practice, not a feeling, something you do rather than something you have, enacted through the daily work of planting and protecting and passing on knowledge to the next generation. If you're watching this and feeling the pull of Tasmania, feeling like maybe you'd like to visit or even stay, I want to tell you something important. Come with humility. Come ready to listen rather than lecture, to receive rather than take, to be changed rather than to change things. Tasmania doesn't need saving by outsiders, doesn't need your pity or your condescension. What it offers, if you're willing to accept it, is an alternative way of being, a different set of values, a lived demonstration that another world is possible. But you can only see that if you slow down, if you stay longer than a quick tour allows, if you talk to people and ask questions and accept that what seems simple on the surface is actually complex and nuanced and worthy of deep respect. The ferry is leaving the dock now, heading back to Bruny Island with a load of supplies and a few tourists, and I'm remembering my first crossing, how nervous I was, how certain I was that I knew what I was looking for. I didn't know anything then. I was looking for a story I could film and edit and package neatly, a beginning and middle and end that would fit into the expected format of travel documentaries. But Tasmania doesn't fit into expected formats. It sprawls and contradicts itself and refuses simple conclusions. It's wounded and healing, ancient and innovative, isolated and connected, struggling and thriving, all at the same time. The story isn't finished because stories about real places never are. They keep unfolding, chapter after chapter, as long as there are people who care enough to keep writing them. So I guess what I'm saying, as I prepare to leave this place that's given me so much, is that you don't watch a documentary about Tasmania and then move on to the next thing. You let it work on you. You let it ask you questions about how you're living and what you're protecting and whether you're paying attention to what matters. You let it suggest that maybe the life you're leading isn't the only possible life, that maybe there are other ways to measure success and meaning and happiness. You let it remind you that the world is bigger and stranger and more full of possibility than your daily routine would suggest, and that you're part of it, responsible for your small piece of it, capable of making it better or worse through 10,000 small choices. Thank you for coming with me on this journey. Thank you for your patience with my fumbling attempts to articulate what this place means, what it's taught me, why it matters. I hope somewhere in these stories you've found something that resonates, something that stays with you, something that changes how you see the world even a little bit. And if you ever find yourself in Tasmania, if you ever stand on a beach at sunset, or in a forest at dawn, or on a mountain watching the light change, I hope you'll remember to be quiet and patient and open. I hope you'll let the place speak to you in its own language. I hope you'll recognize that you're standing somewhere that matters, somewhere that people have loved and protected and fought for, somewhere that holds lessons we desperately need about how to live on this planet we all share. Take care of yourselves and each other. Pay attention to the small things. Plant trees you'll never see fully grown. Protect what's vulnerable. Build communities that care for their members. Choose connection over convenience. And remember that hope is something you practice every day through ordinary actions done with intention and love. Tasmania taught me that, and I'll carry it with me wherever I go for the rest of my life. I hope you will too. Safe travels wherever your journey takes you. And thank you for letting me share mine with you.